Why are there so many export settings for our music? This is crazy. If you've ever been overwhelmed by the number of options that you have, like 96, 48, 44, 32-bit, float, 16-bit, I'm just going to give it to you straight. And in this video, we're going to cover what the best export settings are for both streaming and for CDs, if that's still a thing. If you don't know me, my name is Bobby Balo. I'm the mixing and mastering engineer at Raytown Productions, and I help music creators and bedroom producers make better sounding music without needing expensive analog gear or unnecessary plugins. If you want some plugins that are not unnecessary, I've put together an awesome PDF that you can download that has my favorite free plugins. I have a link to that in the description. It literally covers every category like compressors, distortion, echo, reverb, you name it, it's in there. All right, so for my digital audio workstation, I'm using Cubase, but I promise all these tips that we're going to cover will work for any DAW that you're using, whether that's Logic or Reaper or Pro Tools, whatever. So when exporting our music, here is the goal. We want to maximize the quality we have, but at the same time, we want to minimize the number of times that the distributor is going to convert the sample rate, the bit depth, or the file format. A good strategy for getting the best quality out of our song is to prepare it in the most common format available. That way, for the majority of platforms that our song goes to, we are in control of how the song will sound. So with that in mind, the gold standard for listening and streaming audio is still 44.1 kilohertz sample rate and 16-bit audio. The most widely accepted audio format is WAV files, so do not submit an MP3 ever, period. Don't do that. Now, if you have no other option and all you have is an MP3 on your phone after like your computer exploded and you still want to distribute that, that's fine. But if you have an option, do not use MP3. Some distributors are accepting higher sample rates like 96 kilohertz or 32-bit audio, but unless you are specifically sending the file to a high-resolution supplier, just stick with the gold standard. Okay, so in Cubase, we're going to go to Audio Export. So if your session is 48, you can use the sample rate conversion built into your digital audio workstation. So you can just choose 44.1 here. Bit depth, we want it to be 16-bit. Again, don't choose any of these other options when we're finalizing it for distribution because they're either not going to accept it or they're going to convert it and you don't know how they're going to do that. If you recorded at a higher sample rate like 48 or 96 kilohertz, you can just use your sample rate converter that's built into your digital audio workstation. But if you're unsure of the quality of that, I do have a recommendation for you. There is a free sample rate converter that I have in that PDF that I mentioned earlier. So don't forget to download that. Link is in the description. But it's called RateBrain by Vox&Go, and it is awesome. I've tested it out. It's super clean, easy to use, and it's a standalone thing. Now, before you hit export, there's one more thing that you should check. Now, you want to make sure that your limiter is on the last channel spot so that we make sure that we don't send any audio over 0 dB. And actually, something that you'd never want to do is also set your output ceiling to 0 dB. The loudest we should be exporting audio is probably around -0.2 or -0.3 dB. So the reason we add a little bit extra headroom here is to let the converters have a little bit of breathing room just in case someone decides to play your amazing song on their really, really crappy sound system. These settings are also the standard for CDs, so regardless if you want to export for streaming or CDs, 44.1 and 16-bit WAV files are what you should be using. Now, when it comes to streaming, things get a little bit complicated. What happens when you send your songs off for distribution is that behind the scenes, they're going to take that file and then convert it to more streamable formats like MP3 or something that is lower quality. And we need to add in a little bit extra headroom to minimize any of the distortion that might be caused from that transcoding from your beautiful, pristine WAV file to a streamable format. So without getting too technical here, we need to put in a little bit of extra headroom if we want to send it out for streaming. And a nice, general, safe number to use more often than not is simply -1 dB full scale. That is recommended by the majority of distributors, but it isn't a requirement. So if maximum volume is your goal, at the risk of possibly distorting when consumers will play back your songs, you can turn it up to minus 0.2 as well, but be aware that you're running the risk of causing it to sound distorted. And the last thing I just want to quickly touch base on is dither. So it's standard practice to always dither when you go from a higher bit depth to a lower one. So if you have a 24-bit WAV file and you're going to 16-bit to export and send off to distribution, you should probably dither. But digital audio workstations are kind of complicated. And a lot of times, even if you have a 16-bit session and you're exporting a 16-bit file, they will upconvert it to 32-bit float format behind the scenes, and you won't even know. So what I recommend is just to always have dither enabled on the very last slot of your 2-bus. If the limiter you're using doesn't have dithering as an option, a lot of standalone dithering plugins are available. Just put that one below your limiter and you'll be all set. So in this case, I have a dithering option right here. We can just put it on 16-bit since that's going to be the format that we're going to be sending to the distributor. And if you're curious about what dither does, is it essentially is going to be cleaning up some of the distortion that happens when we convert between the different bit depths by adding in a little bit of noise. And I'm talking a very, very low amount of noise. And in my opinion, adding that little bit of noise to clean up the distortion is totally worth it. Now, dithering isn't anything to get hung up on. A lot of people have some very strong opinions, and to be totally honest, no one is probably ever going to know if you dithered or didn't. So just decide if you want to throw the dither on or not and move on. So I have a question for you. What settings do you use, and do you use dither? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to pick up that PDF I made for you that has my favorite free plugins, and it also has that awesome sample rate converter. If you want to help support me and this channel, please hit that share button and share it with your friends on Facebook or Reddit or whatever your favorite social media platform is. And I'm sure there's many other people with the same questions you have, so I'm sure they'll find it very helpful. Thank you so much for your time and attention today, and I hope to see you in the next video.